everyone, in this lesson we're looking at TIA portals, windows and panels. The reason I wanted to do a lesson dedicated to this is because TIA portal is very busy. There are a lot of flyout panels, different menus, and some of them aren't always immediately obvious where they are. So for example, right now I have absolutely everything collapsed. So we are just looking at a blank screen. I do have a project open. You can find on the left hand side our Start tab, which if I click there will pop out with our project tree at the top here, reference projects and a details view. Now if you can't see any of this stuff on this side, if you click view you'll find your additional stuff here. So let's turn everything on. So task cards as well. See, some of these don't stay turned on. You see the task card flies out, and I believe that's the same for the inspector window, which will fly up from the bottom. So this here is our basic overview. It's a different way of viewing your objects and information other than the project tree on the left here. And in fact, when you actually have your overview open, it changes what is shown in this project tree to overview folders only. For example, if I click program blocks here, you can see that it takes me into program blocks. Now, if I had program blocks in here, so if I go ahead and create a new block, let's just leave everything default and close it when it opens. You'll find that here my blocks are listed, but they are not listed in my project tree. Now if I actually open this block, so we're no longer in the overview view, you'll see that the view changes and now my program blocks are displayed in the project tree, so I can access them without having to shift back to the overview. If I click overview again, you'll see that this changes again and I can no longer see the blocks on the left hand side. Now when I first started with TIA Portal, I found that really confusing. I very rarely use the overview, which you can find down in the bottom left. However, it is useful in some cases because if you want to view the details of many objects at once, you can come to the details tab here in the overview, and as long as you've got this folder here, which is show your subordinate elements, which is essentially show what's inside folders, so you can have a look at the hierarchy. You can then go on and make changes to multiple things from here, such as turning off block optimization and having a look at general information such as what group the block belongs to, when it was last modified, and some timestamps, what the language is, and things like that, which can come in useful instead of trawling through many layers individually. So when it comes to the project tree, you'll find everything that you need to do your programming in the project tree. If I just switch out of overview, you'll find a place to add new blocks. You'll find your blocks. You can also create your groups here, so new folders, and then make your amendments of dragging blocks into those groups. You'll find things such as your technology objects and external source files, PLC tags. We'll go through what each of these means in a different lesson. You'll also find things such as ungrouped devices, of which we don't have any right now. Things like your project security settings, where you can set your users and other settings. Cross-device functions, which is for when you have more than one device in a project, and other things such as documentation and online access to your hardware. Now, as I've been clicking around, you've probably noticed that this details view has been updating. So if I go back and click block 1, there's nothing in here right now. But if I go ahead and create a data block, and in my data block, I just create some booleans. oops, you'll find that in the details view, I now have access to these. And if I wanted to place a bit of logic, but I don't want to navigate away from this screen, but I still want to make use of drag and drop, if I click data block 1 here, you'll see things appear in the details view, and I can actually drag them out of there and into place. And that's how we can reference global data and things like that without having to remember where it is. We can pick it from the project tree, and we can navigate our way around a bit more easily. And you'll find that this details view works with a lot of things, such as our tags. So I can find all my tags in here. We don't have any tags created right now, but they will appear in here. This is just some examples of hardware tags. It works with blocks, data blocks, and various other places in the project. It's just a good idea to have this open if you like dragging and dropping. When you get more familiar with your own systems, you'll probably find you don't use it that much, but we will be making use of it throughout this course. And here is a really interesting concept. The reference projects is something that I really like that Siemens has implemented, and it actually allows you to open another project and use that to copy information out of that project, such as blocks you've used before, or data blocks, or structures and things like that. You can even copy entire PLCs out of it, or entire HMIs out of it. It just makes project setup from standard templates that much easier. And we will look at reference projects again later on. And then on the right hand side here, you find things like instructions. I'll just fix this out by clicking this expand permanently button, and that just means that it doesn't try to hide away. In here you'll find things such as your instructions for the language you're looking at. So this changes depending on what you have open. For example, if I go and open my data block, you'll find that this instructions tab disappears because we can't have instructions in a data block. And when I go back to block 1, it'll go back to our instructions. And in here you'll find all of the instructions that you can perform in ladder from the standard Siemens instruction set. There are some additional instructions that you'll find in libraries, which you can find in this extended instructions down here. And again, we have more for technology, communication, and some optional packages that you can add and find various other things that you have installed. So that's it for the instructions. Testing here is if you were to be connected online, which if I click go online, we can do things such as running and stopping our PLC and performing a memory reset. We can also do things such as setting our call environment, which is when you want to look at an instance of a function block. You need to tell TIA Portal which instance do you want to look at to make sure that you're looking at valid data for the instance of the function block you're looking at. You can do things such as breakpoints and have a look at the call hierarchy. We'll see all of this with stuff populated as the course goes on. And then we have things like tasks such as find and replace, and some other things down here for languages and resources. So you can have a look at things in other languages that you have set up in your project. And then this is probably one that we will see a lot of going through the course, which is the project library. A project library is a great way of ensuring that that your function blocks are standardized. They can be shared between other projects, and you can have global libraries to actually extract that standardization out of a project and store it where it can be distributed to other projects and used to keep other projects up to date as time goes on. And then we have our add-ins here, of which I don't have any. We probably won't be covering this as the course goes on because I have no requirements for add-ins in this course. And then down here we have our properties. So if I fix this one as well, you can appreciate that the screen is starting to get very, very busy. we don't really have a lot of room for development here, which is why you'll probably find most of the time you have these menus automatically flying back. But again, this is a dynamic window here, so depending on what you have selected, the properties change to show you properties for the item you have selected. So right now I have block 1 selected in my project view, and we can see the properties for block 1. Now, one of the interesting things with Siemens is they seem to disable changes depending on where you are or what's happening. So right now I can't change anything because I'm online, which that does make sense. If I go offline and choose to go offline from my PLC, you'll find that I'm now able to change the name. So I could change that to block 2 if I want, and you'll see in the project view it's updated to block 2. I'm unable to change the type, unlike some other PLCs where you can change a function block to a function and vice versa. You don't have that capability with Siemens, which can be a little bit frustrating if you accidentally choose the wrong one, and then don't realize until you've built quite a lot of your code. And you can change the language, however, you are restricted depending on what your initial starting language was. So I can change between function block diagram and ladder, but if I was to choose structured text, for example, I can't change that into ladder. There is no conversion process for that. And then we have things like what block number do we want to be, which, if I'm honest, for the most part, I leave it as automatic. I don't really have a requirement for setting out block numbers. You can also see all your stuff like information, timestamps for modification, what the compilation of this block is, and do things such as set your protection and any other attributes such as optimize block access, for example. Now, like I said, depending on what you have selected, the properties view changes. So I've just selected this tag here, datablock1.var var, and yes, it's changed. So you'll see that I'm unable to change the name. I can't change the name here, and I can't change any of the attributes, and this is because I'm in a different view. So if I was to go to datablock1, where I select exactly the same variable, you'll now see that I can set these options, and I can do things such as changing the name, and it will change in the block. So it's something to be aware of. If you don't have the block open or in the foreground, and you're accessing the properties by some other means, then the majority of the time the information is read-only. And again, it's something that took me a while to get my head around. I would have thought if I could access the properties, I should be able to change them. But yes, that's not always the case. And depending on what else you have selected, you get various different tabs that appear up here. Tier Portal will tell you whether or not they're available depending on where you are and what you're trying to do. There are so many different possibilities of properties that can pop up here that we're probably not going to cover them all through this course. However, we will see that the properties window is used extensively, especially in hardware setup. And then we have other things such as info, which is our general sort of log of what's happened. So we can see that we've done some saving events, we did a download to the PLC, and then we've closed that connection to the PLC as well. Here's our cross-references. So again, depending on what you have selected, it gives you cross-references, and there's a load of different options. We'll go through cross-referencing in a separate lesson. And then our compile log, where we can view errors, we can jump to certain things. So if we do have an error in our compile, we can actually jump to that error, and Tier Portal will take us directly to that error. And then we have some syntax stuff here, which we won't be able to display right now. And then finally, we have some diagnostics, which only appear when you are online. And it just tells you things like what you're connected to, whether there's any errors, It's a sort of smaller version of the online diagnostics that we will go through in a separate lesson. That's an awful lot to take in, and it still doesn't cover all of the windows and menus and different layouts that you can have and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, we will go through this and we'll see different views and stuff as the course develops. One thing that is worth noting, into your portal, you can pop out your windows. So although we're set up like this at the moment, we can click to maximize this view. And when we click again to go back to embedded, it will take us back to the view that we had before. And if that still isn't good enough and you wanted to run this as a pop out, so for whatever reason you wanted to pop this out, resize it, do whatever, you can pop this out. And the nice thing about Tier Portal is you can actually move it onto a different screen. So right now I've dragged that off this screen and onto my second screen, and it will still function exactly the same way as long as Tier Portal is in the foreground. And I can drag it back and embed it again, and we go back to the same view that we had before. That is a very, very nice feature for when you have a very busy screen, especially if you have multiple screens available. And that's it for the layout really of Tier Portal. You can appreciate that if you have a small laptop with a small screen, you are going to struggle for real estate. Although Tier Portal is great in terms of you can minimize these screens and you have full control over whether stuff's embedded, whether it's floating, and all that sort of stuff, it can be a bit crowded. So the bigger the screen and the better resolution you have, the better time you're going to have with this environment.